Everything about what I do has been ingrained in me since I was a kid. I remember when I was 15, 16 years old, I was driving my dad's truck. We were going out hunting and I got stuck in the mud, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm never getting stuck in the mud again. And from there, it grew a passion. I ended up buying a Jeep that turned into this crazy rock buggy, and my entire life has been dedicated to the off-road industry. I was racing early on in my years. I started building these off-road buggies not too long ago, about 5-6 years ago, and it's everything. I actually live in my shop and come downstairs every day with a smile on my face because it's exactly what I love. We're here at Busted Knuckle Off-Road, where we build the baddest off-road rock bouncers on the planet. This is a 2023 Ride RSS. It's supercharged, it's got a 427 stroker, it makes about 900 horsepower. We've got front and rear steering on this thing, so you can have a lot of maneuverability. This is an extremely strong vehicle, extremely rugged, that you can beat the crap out of, and you don't have to worry about whether it's gonna take you home or not. It's got all the luxury stuff in it as well, so not only is it one of the top tier vehicles on the planet, but it also does it in luxury. We've got reverse cameras, we've got the windshield right here, we've got glove boxes, we've got really awesome mufflers on these things that make it sound amazing. It's got awesome seats in here that are super plush, so it gives you a really comfortable ride. We've got communications kits on here so that whenever you're riding around, you look like a fighter pilot. Super cool stuff. A whole lot of body accessories and things that just make this vehicle way cooler than anything you've ever seen. Here we have a 2022 model. This is my personal buggy, and this is what we call the R&D buggy, or the shop buggy. We take this out and we beat the living brakes off this buggy to see if we have any type of failures or anything that we need to upgrade on the system before we go into production on the next model year. So this model right here is something you can see. I've rolled a couple times. We've got some dings and dents on the tubing. It's been upside down. I have tried to break this buggy every which way, and every time I end up hurting myself and not the buggy. I got into the off-road industry just because it's a passion of mine. I've been doing it ever since I was young, and it's one of those things that always fascinated me, just driving over rocks and climbing big hills. It's just something that absolutely just ingrained into me early on in life that I had to do that, and so I do kind of have a metal shaping background because just like a lot of guys, I started off with nothing, you know what I mean? I was working in the garage, and before that I was working in the rocks outside the garage. I was cutting all of my metal with a 4.5-inch grinding rock instead of a cutoff wheel, and one day a buddy comes over and is like, hey man, there's a cutoff wheel. And after that, a buddy of mine comes up and he's like, man, use a cutting torch. And I'm like, what's that? You know what I mean? And even the tube bender that I had, I made from scratch because we took some metal out of a dumpster that was about the right size and whittled it away into some dies, and then literally made a tube bender off of some hand scribbled drawings that I had. And just over the years, we've accumulated all these different awesome tools. Because I've started off in the rocks next to my house, I really appreciate the big tools and things that we have now, and I've always spent a ton of time working on metal, and that has grown me into the type of person I am now, where I can look at a piece of metal and I can see the end goal just out of a flat plate of steel. Over here in our fabrication area, we have a Haas VF4 mill, and then we also have an Akuma 4-axis CNC lathe. We also have various pieces of equipment for doing manual turning, and we produce everything that goes onto one of these buggies right here in-house. We try to outsource as little as possible. We have some of the knuckles and some of the high steer arms that go on our buggies. We manufacture all that stuff here, and we make sure that this is a quality product by testing it on our own buggies before it goes to the public. This is a 1951 model Cincinnati mill. This was actually given to me by a friend of mine whose father passed away, and we've been running this mill ever since. We use it for all sorts of different projects that are small, that we have to do some really precise stuff. This thing weighs like 14,000 pounds, so I have to use 2 forklifts to move this thing in and out. That's old school American casting right there, Yeah, this thing's cool. We actually use this all the time. It is a gigantic drill bit sharpener. It's made by a company called Oliver, and it'll hold up to a 4-inch drill bit. And this is a 1953 model machine, and it blows my mind that somebody was able to come up with the calculations to be able to move all these parts together to give you the perfect cut on a drill bit. This right here is just so cool to me because I can barely do that with a computer, and these guys did it on paper. This is an old jet lathe that we use. It's made specifically for our axle tubes and some of the other pieces that we machine that are just something that you need to have a manual lathe for. It's not a repetitive operation. So we use this a lot for that. One of the main tools that we use here is our tube bender, and before we had the Baileigh tube bender, we had my homemade bender, and you know, it's just not repeatable. When we upgraded from that to the Baileigh bender, it took our cycle time and cut it, I don't know, in a tenth. I mean, we can do a 90-degree bend in a couple seconds now. And the repeatability of it is what's really important. If I type in 90 degrees and I hit the button, by God, it's gonna come out exactly at 90 degrees every single time. And that's really important whenever you're into a manufacturing process where you have to have that repeatability. We use a lot of different Baileigh equipment for what we're doing on our production side of the house. One of the main things that we use is an RDB 250 rotary draw bender from Baileigh to produce all the bends that you see in these chassis. Now, these bends have to be very, very close tolerance. If not, the chassis doesn't fit together right. It's a rotary draw bender, so it doesn't use hydraulics. This machine is highly accurate, and we've been using it for many years. You can see the operator's got a touch screen right here, and on our bars, it has the start and stop of the bend and the rotation that comes from our other piece of CNC equipment. And it also has all the part numbers on there. So the operator's gonna bring this bar in, he's gonna line up the marks, he's gonna type in what that machine tells him to right here on this screen, hits the button, it bends the perfect angle every time. I mean, you can't get any simpler than that. This is the new future of Busted Knuckle Off-Road. We decided that we wanted to build a 4-seat buggy for people who want to go off-roading and then bring their families with them. It's basically built off the same stuff as our 2-seater, so you've got the same drivetrain, you've got the same big horsepower, you've got the same reliability, but in a 4-seater configuration, which is friendly for a lot of people who want to go off-road with their family. You can see here we've got an LS3 engine. We've got all of our 4-link bars and our exhaust and everything. We've got all of our seats inside here. We've got the doors off right now so that we can do a little bit of work, but when this is all said and done, this is gonna be a really sweet machine. Jig tables are where all the magic happens. This gives us repeatability in our manufacturing process. And without that RDB 250 from Baileigh, these jig tables would be worthless. We have to make sure that every single bar that's in our assembly falls into these little saddles, and all of our 4 links and everything are in the perfect spot to make sure that we have repeatability within our processes. Once we get our tube assemblies cut and bent and off the jig table, this is what it looks like before it goes to get its body panels and things put on. It is a 100% tube chassis that is extremely rigid and will handle years of abuse. Once we get all the bars cut and we get them on the jig table, it usually takes about 3 or 4 days to be at this situation where we're ready for final weld out. Yeah, we can smoke through it. Now that we have a bender that's bending the way it's supposed to, and we've got the dragon doing its thing, and we've got people who are trained, we're able to go through it a lot faster. When we first started building these things, it would take us about 9 months to build a buggy, and we're building them in about 3.5 weeks now. And the turnkey rock bouncers, it's no different than just buying a Chevrolet truck or something. You're gonna go to our website, and each different model has a couple different trim packages. And it ranges from supercharger, you know, big boy horsepower packages down to like your standard LS3s, you know, anywhere from 550 horsepower all the way up to 850 horsepower. We've got front and rear steering packages. We've got different body packages and trim packages. Once the build process is done, you come down to Busted Knuckle and pick up your new ride and you go off-road. This area is where we do all of our axle fabrication, all of our laser cutting, and then all of our panel fitting for our buggies. So you can see right here, we're getting all the sheet metal laid out on the side of this buggy, and all that stuff comes from our laser cutter and then our Baileigh equipment. We've got a couple different pieces of equipment that help us out with sheet metal fabrication. Probably our shining star is gonna be this BP 3305 CNC press brake behind me. We do a lot of bending with this. It's perfect for lightweight sheet metal stuff. There's a lot of adjustability in it, and then it's great for having a whole bunch of different angles and stuff, because for us, we're gonna be building one of these buggies and we'll have a whole bunch of different press brakes back to back, and this helps us with that. We also have our magnetic press brake, and I'll tell you what, if you don't have one of these in your shop, you need one of these in your shop because this can do things that no other press brake can. You can take a box and you can completely fold it up. It's got really cool dies on the other side so that you can fold into itself. You can create different things that you can't make on a CNC press brake. Super cool piece of equipment. We also have the slip roll over here. And there's a handful of things that are on our buggies that are slip rolled that gives it that nice round look on the sheet metal. And we use this for that a lot of times. The shrinker stretcher is something that you definitely have to have if you're building custom sheet metal. Having the ability to shrink one edge and expand one edge really helps out with the manufacturing process, especially if you're one of those guys that likes to build like a custom type gas tank or a fender for a motorcycle, or you're trying to roll a panel in. You can't do that without one of these. We're really familiar with the social media impact that we have across the world, and it's refreshing to see a company that also understands that social media impact like Baileigh. Bailey's been able to take their tools and equipment and show a professional fabricator like myself and some of these other guys building things in their garage or in their shop that you can now build in your garage, in your shop. And having that relationship through social media between myself and another fabricator really helped me realize that if they can do it, I can do it. And sometimes, you know, having that social media impact and that social media presence is really what it takes to be able to acquire a sale and help a guy out in his garage, show him, by God, you can make this awesome piece of equipment with these tools. Behind me, we have our dual pallet exchange 6K fiber laser. This is brand new for us for 2023, and it's helped us out a ton with the manufacturing process because we can cut and we can scribe directly on a piece of material and then go straight to our Baileigh bender, and it tells us what the angle needs to be. It tells us what the press brake needs to be on all the different parts and pieces that we make. So this machine, in conjunction with our Baileigh machine, really took our fabrication to the next level. Over here we have our axle fabrication area, and at any one point in time we have a bunch of axles in the process of getting built out. And we do about 130 axles a year, which is an insane amount of custom axles. We build the rear ends for our buggies for our production side of the house, but we also build rear ends for people who are just wanting to go off-road and they want the next step in their axle. So we built this. This is actually a 90-ton press that we use for removing the tubes out of the axle housing. We replaced the tubes with a little bit thicker tubes so that it's better for off-roading. It's going to be a lot stronger of an assembly. And so what we do is we cut the old plug welds out of the housing, and then we use this press to press out the tubes, and you end up with assemblies that look about like this. And then we press these big tubes in, and these big tubes are 1/2-inch wall, which is essential for a high horsepower off-road machine. Whenever I first started in the off-road industry, I don't know that I was taken very seriously. I would try to four-wheel, and sometimes I get left behind. I've broken stuff and I've got left on the trail, and my legacy is gonna be something that nobody will ever forget. We're building an enterprise that's different than anybody else has ever done in the off-road industry. We're standardizing the type of process that goes into building this type of off-road rig. Before me, people just build rigs in their basement, and it's really difficult to have a repeatability. It's tough to have an industry. We created a whole new vehicle with the ability for anybody to be able to get into one and take off and run. And because of that, our legacy is going to change the entire landscape of the off-road industry.